Hello, my name is Aaron Skeen, and this is Prompt Hierarchy Training. All right, so in this training, we will be teaching you about the prompt hierarchy, why it's important, and how to use it working with children with autism or other cognitive disabilities. All right, let's get into it. So first, we want to talk about what is a prompt. So with ABA, one of the teaching strategies that we use to help children with autism learn new skills is through the use of prompts. So a prompt is an additional stimuli that is used to assist an individual to correctly respond to a specific instruction or question. So in layman terms, that means that it's a way to help the learner select the correct answer, and it's a way that we are assisting them in selecting that correct answer, so that hopefully over time they will learn to select that correct answer themselves. So why are prompts important? So prompts are important when teaching kids with ASD or autism because it is important for the children to receive reinforcement consistently when they are working with us. So in like a general education classroom, we might teach a child the answer to a question a few times, but then hopefully we would expect them to then get the answer correct themselves going forward. But in ABA, it's not always the most effective way to teach that way. The skill may be beyond their current level of ability, and we may need to provide additional support. The reason we use prompting is because it allows the child to answer correctly with our assistance so that they can still receive reinforcement for working with us for that new target. I know it might sound a little weird to be reinforcing someone even though we're helping them and pretty much giving them the answer, but research has shown that it is an effective way to teach the skill to these children with autism and other cognitive disabilities. So yeah, and then hopefully over time we can fade that so that we can have them answer the questions more correctly by themselves independently. So we use what's called a prompt hierarchy. The prompt hierarchy is an important skill to understand when working with kids with ASD because it's a system of how we prompt. And it's how we organize that system and level of prompting to assist the child to get the correct answer. These prompts range from the most intrusive prompts to the least intrusive prompts, and they can go in either directions. We can go from least to most or most to least. We'll get to that in a minute. So it depends on their skill level, and what skill you are specifically targeting will also determine what type of how you use the prompt hierarchy. And so here we have a visual representation of our prompt hierarchy. Here at the bottom we have the full physical prompt. And then going up, we have a partial physical, then we have modeling, gestural, verbal, and then visual prompting at the top. So it would go from the most to the least, and then vice versa from the least down to the most. So that's a looking at how the prompting hierarchy goes in levels. So starting with, if we wanted to do most to least prompting, we would start at the bottom of this graph, starting down here with full physical, and then move our way up as the BCBA deems it necessary to reduce some of that prompting or to change it up. The BCBA also has their discretion to determine what's most effective, which prompting, where to start on this hierarchy. Maybe sometimes they won't start at a full physical, maybe they'll start at a partial physical or things like that. But when you're determining which prompting method to use, there's a few things to keep in mind. The first would be if someone acquires a skill slowly. So if they have a history of acquiring skills slowly, sometimes you can start with most prompting to least prompting. So if they have a few prerequisite skills or are pre-verbal, things like that, or if they exhibit high rates or high intensity of like escape behavior. So if they have tendency to escape, we can start with physical prompting. And vice versa. So if the BCBA says we're going to start with least to most prompting, that would be in the exact opposite order. You start with something higher up on the list that's less intensive, and then work your way down as necessary if it needs to be. So hopefully you wouldn't have to go too far down on that graph. But children or learners who would need that would be children who have a more fundamental skill set, who don't easily become dependent on prompts, and who don't have lots of escape behaviors from work activities. All right, so now let's get into talking about them specifically. So there are the 6 types of prompts. So the first one, we're going to start at the bottom here, is the full physical prompt. A full physical prompt is a hand-over-hand contact in which you are guiding the learner to the correct response. So if there's a picture or an item that you want them to select, you would physically guide their hand to the correct answer, and that would be a full physical prompt. This is usually obviously learned when they have lower skills and need more assistance with getting it correct. The next level of prompting, going up one, would be the partial physical prompt. So the partial physical prompt is less intensive, but it's still you physically guiding them. So sometimes you can be grabbing them by the wrist or the elbow, in which you are more gently guiding them to the correct response so that they can still get the answer correctly. All right, so the next level of prompting on this graph we have now is modeling. So modeling is pretty self-explanatory, in which you demonstrate the correct response so that the learner will repeat after you. So for example, if you are teaching a learner how to wash their hands and they have a moderate amount of skills just in general, and you can model how to wash your hands and then have them repeat after you. So then going up, the next level would be gestural prompting. So gestural prompts are a simple way that you as the teacher are gesturing with your own body to gesture towards them to what is the correct answer. So if you had a picture out, you would simply just, you could point at the picture, or you could nod with your head, or do something physically with your body in which you are demonstrating to the learner what is the correct answer so that you can guide them that way. Gesturing is also, once you get up higher in these levels, they get higher rates of becoming prompt dependent. Gestural is one of the higher rates that are prompt dependent in several ways. The next level is then verbal prompting. With verbal prompts, you're going to give some sort of verbal cue to guide the learner to the correct answer. For example, telling someone the picture's on the right, or it's the item on the top shelf, something like that, in which you're verbally telling them what to do. It doesn't also have to be words. You could be using sounds, and they don't have to necessarily be from you. It can be like a recorded sound that can verbally prompt someone to the correct answer. And so lastly, at the top of our list, we have the visual prompt. Visual prompts are pretty self-explanatory as well. They can be anything visual that will help the learner to correctly answer. So this can be like a written word, or a picture on a card. So anything that will help them get the answer correctly. So for example, one that I've used is if a child is struggling with labeling different types of balls with the same tact as ball, I've used a visual prompt of the word ball, if they can read the word ball, for all these different types of balls so that they can then associate those together. And so lastly, when we're doing prompting, what we talked about is fading prompts. So prompt fading is another important part of prompting children with ASD, because we want to be able to fade those prompts over time so they don't become dependent on those prompts for answering. So like the BCBA will watch the data closely, and then will instruct the technicians or whoever's working with the children on when and how they should reduce those promptings over time so that they no longer become dependent. And that is it for the prompt hierarchy. Thanks for watching. My name is Aaron Skeen, and good luck, everybody.